an increase in size. Prophet said that it's an increase in size or number. My dear students, sometimes you get a long question on factors affecting growth. So there what you are supposed to do is you will need to enlist these 10 points and write at least 3 to 4 sentences on each. That is number 1, heredity, nutrition, illness, race, socio-economic factors, family size and birth order, secular trends, climatic and seasonal effects, psychological disturbance and exercise. To be very specific, number 1, heredity, friends, it is seen that most of the malnutritions have got a genetic origin. Secondly, as regards nutrition, any disturbance in the nutrition will affect the growth and development. Illness, any illness during childhood or during the growth period will affect normal growth and development. There are racial differences amongst the different racial groups like whites and the black Americans. There is definitely a contribution of socio-economic factors. Like if there is a socio-economically weak child, the child will have disturbed growth and development. Family size and birth order also affects the growth and development. Secular trends, climatic seasons, and psychological disturbances also do have an effect. Lastly, exercise. It is said that exercise is very important for the perfect physical fitness of the individual. Features of growth we will see under 4 groups. That is, number 1, concept of normality, which implies what is supposed to be normal at a particular time. Rhythm of growth, which says that growth does not take place at the same space and pace. And timing, we will see what is growth spurts. And under the differential growth, we will see what is cephalopodding gradient of growth and Scammonn's growth. This is a diagram which is showing you what is cephalopodding gradient of growth. See the diagram from the second month of fetus to 4th month till 25 years. Friends, children, there is an axis of increased growth extending from head towards the feet. 3rd month of intrauterine life, head takes up almost 50% of the total body length. In contrast, limbs are still rudimentary and trunk is underdeveloped. At birth, trunk and limbs have grown faster than head and face, so that the proportion of entire body devoted to head has increased to about 30%. The overall pattern of growth follows this course with a progressive reduction of relative size of the head to about 12% of the head. Adult, and at birth, legs represent about 1/3 of the total body length, while in the adult they represent about half. Scammonn's growth curve, as the diagram is showing you, not all tissue systems of the body grow at the same time. Body tissues broadly classified into 4 groups. Number 1, lymphoid tissue, neural tissue, visceral tissue or germinal tissue, and the genital tissue. Lymphoid tissue proliferates rapidly in late childhood and reaches about 200% of adult size. By 18 years of age, lymphoid tissue undergoes involution to reach adult size. Neural tissue grows very rapidly and almost reaches adult size by 6 to 7 years of age. Germinal tissue exhibits S-shaped curve, rapid growth up to 2 to 3 years of age, followed by a slow phase of growth between 3 to 10 years. After 10 years, a rapid phase of growth occurs, terminating by 18 to 20th year. And in case of genital tissue, it shows negligible growth until puberty. Growth spurts. This again comes as a short note in your theory paper, my dear students. So when it is asked as a short note, what you are supposed to write is that growth does not take place uniformly at all times. There are periods when a sudden acceleration of growth occurs. This sudden increase is called as growth spurts. Different growth spurts you have just before birth, 1 year after birth, you have a mixed condition growth spurt, which is in case of boys it is 8 to 11 years, and in case of girls it is between the ages of 7 to 9 years. You have a pre-pubertal growth spurt in boys between 14 to 16 years and in girls between 11 to 13 years. Importance of growth spurts by dear children. Growth modifications by means of functional and orthodontic appliances elicit better response during growth spurts. See, you sometimes get a question in your theory paper that a child of 11 to 12 years comes to you with a class 2 paper malnutrition. Give your treatment plan. So that is where the importance of all these points lie, and this is where you need to know what is basically growth spurt. Next, head under this growth and development, what you are supposed to know is methods of measuring growth. My dear students, the basic methods are classified under 2 groups: measurement approaches and experimental approaches. Under the measurement approaches, you have gradiometry, you have anthropometry, you have cephalometry, and you have 3-dimensional imaging. Under experimental approaches, you have vital staining, you have implant radiography. Under the gradiometry is based on measurement of skulls found among human skeletal remains. Anthropometry is based on the measurement of skeletal dimensions of living individuals. Cephalometry allows a direct measurement of bony skeletal dimensions since the bone can be seen through the soft tissue covering a radiograph, and 3D imaging like computed axial tomography, that is CAT, cone beam computed tomography, that is CBCT, and magnetic resonance imaging can be done. Under the experimental approaches, my dear students, you have IT staining, you have dyes stain mineralizing tissues are injected which can be detected later. This technique was introduced by John Hunter. And the latest technique that is being practiced nowadays is what is called as implant radiography. Here, inert metal twins which are easily visualized on the cephalogram are placed in the bones, and this technique was developed by Professor Bock and Coleman. Further, try to remember the description of growth sites and growth centers because, my dear students, this comes as a short note. So, what is a growth site? Growth fields having special role in the growth of the particular bone are called as growth sites. For example, mandibular condyle, maxillary tuberosity, synchondrosis of the basic cranium, sutures, and alveolar process. Growth centers, special case areas which are believed to control the overall growth of the bone, example mandibular condyle. Force, energy or motor for a bone resides primarily within its growth center. We come to the next important topic in growth, that is theories of growth. This again is sometimes asked as a long question in your theory paper. So what you are supposed to write is, you need to enlist these theories, that is genetic theory, sutural dominance theory, cartilage dominance theory, functional matrix theory, Enlow's expanding beam principle, Van Lindbergh's theory, and servo system theory. Genetic theory, it was proposed by Ray Stewart. It states that all growth is controlled by genetic influence and is pre-planned. Sutural dominance theory was proposed by Wehrman and Sichel. It supports the fact that genetic control is expressed directly at the level of bone, particularly the sutures between the membranous bone, especially of cranium and jaws, along with signs of endochondral ossification in cranial base and mandibular condyle. The cartilaginous theory was suggested by James Scott in 1953. According to this theory, genetic control is expressed at cartilage. Nasal septum cartilage is responsible for growth of entire nasomaxillary complex. This is an important theory, my dear students. Try to understand and try to draw this diagram. That is, functional matrix theory was proposed by Melvin Boss in 1960. Functional matrix hypothesis claims that the origin, growth and maintenance of all skeletal tissues and organs are always secondary, compensatory and obligatory responses to temporarily and operationally prior events or processes that occur in specifically related non-skeletal tissues, organs or functioning spaces that are called as functional matrices. To perform any function, certain hard and soft tissues are required. The totality of all skeletal structures, soft tissues and functioning spaces, nasal or oral, necessarily carry out a specific function is called a functional cranial component. That is what is shown in this diagram. That is the functional matrix theory, which states that there is a functional cranial component subdivided into functional matrix skeletal unit, further divided into capsular matrix, craniosacral matrix, microskeletal unit, macroskeletal unit, resulting into transformation plus translation, that is equal to growth. Fifth theory was Enlow's expanding beam principle. Many facial bones or parts of the bone have a V-shaped growth. The growth movement and the enlargement occur towards the wide end of the V. Bone deposition occurs on the inner side of the V and bone resorption on the outer side surface of the V. Try to draw these diagrams so that it becomes self-explanatory. This is again a very important theory as suggested by Van Lindbergh theory. It explains the process of growth and development in a view that combines all major theories. See, dear students, not a single factor is contributing to growth, but growth is a complex process whereby multiple factors are simultaneously acting. So that is what Van Lindbergh tried to explain. It supports Moss functional matrix theory, acknowledges certain concepts of Sechers theory, and Van Lindbergh suggested that the following factors control growth. That is, number one, tracing genetic factors, local epigenetic factors, general epigenetic factors, local environmental factors, and lastly, general environmental factors. The last theory, which was suggested by Petrovic and Sussman, that is servo system theory. Servo system theory is based on cybernetic concept. Cybernetic concept states that everything affects everything and living organisms never operate in open loop mechanism. In open loop mechanism, the input stimulus leads to a response and there is no feedback or regulation. So this suggests that the growth takes place in a closed loop mechanism. Next we go to the methods of bone growth. Bone changes in shape and size by two basic mechanisms, that is number one, bone deposition, number two, by bone resorption. Together it is called as bone remodeling. Furthermore, there is cortical drift, which is combination of bone deposition and resorption, resulting in movement towards depositing surface. Displacement, it is the movement of the whole bone as a unit. Two types of displacements take place, that is primary, if a bone gets displaced as a result of its own growth, and secondary, if a bone gets displaced as a result of growth of adjacent bone. As shown in this diagram, that is, you have number one, primary displacement, and you have the secondary displacement. See, drawing of diagrams is very important. You can take a photograph of these things. Whenever you are trying to explain any concept, take it as a note that if you draw diagrams, if you label them, it is better. This again comes as a short note, that is synchondrosis, which is related to the growth of the cranial base. What is synchondrosis? Most of the bones of cranial base are formed by a cartilaginous process. Later, the cartilage is replaced by bone. However, certain kinds of cartilage remain at the junction of various bones. These areas are called synchondrosis. See the diagram of the four synchondrosis. They are important growth sites of cranial base, and they are primary cartilages. And four important synchondroses that are seen in cranial base are number one, spheno-occipital, sphenoequivoidal, intersphenoidal, and intra-occipital synchondroses.